All right, so let me just click this button, and I've never done this before, so pray it works. Take some breaths with me. Typing in information that it's asking me. All right. It's preparing. There's a loud helicopters. Right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation this afternoon. We are Sun and Moon Yoga Studio. We are going on 27 years old, which is an unbelievable number, but what is time anyway, especially in the pandemic era? And we are really, really proud of one of the crown jewels of our community, which is our legacy of teacher training programs. And we have been running in its current form this teacher training in-depth program at the 200-hour level for going on 12 years, and then the 300-hour Dharma program, the next level up, going on 10 years, I think. And so we have some representatives here from all corners of the program. We have some longtime existing teachers. We have some teachers who were in the very first cohort of our 200-hour program. Hello, Dina Jensen. We have people who completed our 300-hour program and are teaching in a really beautiful, alive way at the studio right now. Hello, Kristen Verderame. We have recent graduates of 200-hour. We have recent graduates of 300-hour. We have current participants in both programs. And we have some students who are interested in joining the programs, and we're here today to talk about what makes us special. And so after that, we're going to ask people to share some of their peak experiences or lowest moments of their teacher training experience. I'm going to share a low moment, which also turned out to be a peak moment in retrospect. And then we'll entertain some questions. So to start, I want to introduce Vicki Christian, who is the director of our teacher training programs. And she will say hello and say a few words in a moment. But meanwhile, we're going to kind of hit on the highlights of what we believe stands our programs apart from a lot of what else is out there and available in terms of yoga teacher training. And the first thing is that we do not speak with one voice. We speak with an eclectic chorus of so many different voices and experiences and lived traditions. And we do not believe that yoga is one thing. We know it's rich and often complicated and tangled up history. And what we do in presenting the richness of this tradition is we tease out what we believe is the best of it, but we never say that we're right. We give voice to the people who we believe are upholding the best values and the best practices. And so one aspect of our program is that we highlight guest teachers who come from notable traditions and have lots of respect around the country and really in some cases around the world. And we include their teachings and them as individuals as part of our programming. Another thing that really sets us apart is that we take our time. we don't try and cram it all into 3 weeks or a month or even 6 months. And this is really purposeful because the body of knowledge is so vast that it is virtually impossible to digest and process all of what we're learning in a short period of time. And so we give this time and space to breathe because we are yoga people, and that the breathing in and breathing back out of the content is a really significant part of how human beings learn, because we're not machines. We have lives, we have jobs and families and obligations and responsibilities, and we make room for that. And so if somebody is eager to complete their program in the space of a year, we've designed each program now so that they can do that. And also we've designed it so that it can stretch out over more than that, if that's what is necessary for each individual person. Another thing that sets us apart is that we've added some of the social responsibility pieces over the years, because we believe that yoga is social justice work. And this has bearing in the texts and a long history connected to it, so that the endeavor of freedom is not freedom in and of one's own individual life. That if yoga is to break the bonds of suffering and to become free as free as an embodied being could be, that necessitates us to look at and consider ways in which our fellow humans are not free, and to use the practices and the teachings that we are incorporating into our own lives and turn them back out into the world in ways that serve others. Another thing that is new for so many of us these days is that we are offering the hybrid option for those who either are not able or uncomfortable with in-person experience right now. And so coming this year, as long as conditions allow, all of our program will happen in person, in real life community, and also will be live streamed for those who are more comfortable at home doing the work. And we're getting better at this, as I think we all are in the summer of 2021, at how we can make it real, how we can make it feel still very connected, and that you can experience the bonding that you would get with a real life in-person experience. So those are just some of the highlights. And I'm going to pause there and invite some of our panelists, if I can call you that, to share, if maybe you've been thinking about this since I floated this idea at the beginning, but either some of your peak experience in teacher training or some of your lowest experience. And so the floor is open. Anybody have anything that stands out as like a really, really beautiful eureka moment of like, yes, this is what freedom means to me. This is what connection means to me. This is what the unification of mind, body, spirit, breath means. Or who am I to even think I should have done this in the first place? And what am I going to do now? Becky.
So a couple of my cohort members are on the call, Judy and Rachel. So I think what was unique to our cohort is we started before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit. So we, by default, went hybrid. So we started in person, and then March of 2020, like everybody else, we went into lockdown mode and finished the program online. So, and I think that certainly wasn't ideal, but like anything, there are pros and cons to both formats. For me personally, I just enjoyed really getting to know other people outside of my circles. So meeting Rachel and Judy, and I think we had 16 or so folks in our program. So just getting to know more people in the yoga community that I just hadn't met before, along with all of the teachers and the mentors. And what I really enjoyed was part of the program is observing classes. So I really enjoyed seeing the different styles of teaching and knowing that it's not right or wrong in the way that you teach. It's learning your own style and learning what's important to you. And just since then, having taught my own classes, I've really become more comfortable with my style of teaching and not worrying so much about, am I doing this wrong or right? And more about reading the audience and reading the students and doing what's right for them. I think the low moment was probably the pandemic, just going into lockdown. Although it was some days nice to be at home and near the kitchen and bathroom too during the classes. That was not a bad thing, but it is a I don't want to say a tough program, but it's an in-depth program, and it is a commitment. And so it's not something to take really lightly, in that it is not longer. It's still 200 hours, but it is extended. So it is a time commitment to get it done. So there were definitely days where I was like, oh gosh, really, do we have to do more of this, and haven't we done enough? But it's never enough. And it's never, every time you think you have a handle on it, you realize you've just learned the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more to know about each area of yoga that it's, some days it's overwhelming, but it's also really beautiful too.
And Becky, I share that sentiment that every time you think you've got a handle on it, there's something new to learn. Hello, world, right? Before we go on to other speakers, Vicky's back from putting out a small fire. And so I just want to give her an opportunity to say hello.
Hi, I'm Vicki Christian, Director of the In-Depth Teacher Training Programs. I'd love to have you guys join our 200-hour Foundations program, or if you already have your 200-hour, we have put together a wonderful year program for the 300-hour that we'll be launching this year.
Another aspect that I just wanted to point out is that our programs are designed for, even if you're not interested in actually teaching yoga, because yoga is so much more than sitting on a mat in a room guiding people in postures. This is deep learning, it's self-reflection, it's experience that opens eyes to seeing the world in a different way, and recognizing other opportunities to serve. So I just wanted to put that out there. So anybody else want to share their memory moments? Rachel. Rachel, you're muted.
Sorry about that. You'd think after a year of this, I would have mastered the mute button, but my dog was coughing in the background and I didn't want you all to have to experience that. I'd like to put in a plug for the long haul program. So Vicki knows this and Annie, but my cohort members probably don't. I just about a month ago finished my final exam, a year after the program ended. Yeah, and it was a struggle. COVID happened and life and a whole bunch of other things I don't need to go into in this forum, but it just wasn't possible for me to complete the final requirements right after we finished the program. And so it took me a long time to get to the point where I was ready to even think about it. And then wouldn't you know, one of the people from our cohort, Melissa Baker, sent out an email one day and said, I would be happy to be anybody's accountability coach. And I thought, that's what I need. I need an accountability coach. And so Melissa and I, over the course of COVID, would meet every couple of weeks on Sunday. And I would tell her what little what step I had taken toward writing my paper for my final project, or what I had done and what I was planning. And it really helped me, that friendship and that support helped me to be able to finish the paper. And then the other thing that really was interesting for me was going into that final exam. It's an open book final exam, but it had been over a year since I had been in those classes. And you don't really study for a final exam, especially when it's open book. You study for a final exam, but not when it's open book. And I was just amazed at the things that were in the memory. As Annie described, it's not trying to shove everything. The program gives you time to digest the information. And so when I was taking the final exam, I was just amazed at the things that came back to me about alignment and about chin position and everything else. So I really appreciated those aspects. And I will say the final exam for me brought all the concepts together because you were looking at them all in one place at one time. And so that was really helpful. And I realized that I know nothing about yoga. Thank you.
Yes. And what a beautiful place to be, you know, in that beginner's mind. And that really speaks to what this tradition can offer us, is the opportunity and the humility to say we know nothing. That leads me to my my experience. So it was early on in my teacher training, and I had not yet had the opportunity to stand up and teach a posture. And my teacher called on me to stand up and teach triangle pose. And I walked up there with an ego that could fill the room, because I had a long-standing asana practice and meditation for years. I thought, and I had been a teacher in the classroom. I was a high school English teacher, so I was comfortable getting up and standing and speaking in front of people. And the words that came out of my mouth were so stumbled and awkward and nonsensical. And I sat back down so deflated and so demoralized and broken wide open to a new start. And that was a moment of pure beauty. Who else wants to share?
I'm happy to.
Kristen.
So I started doing my teacher training not to teach, as you said, Annie. It was to learn more and to help me in my athletics, right? To not get injured in all the sports I was doing. And it wasn't that I developed an interest to want to teach. It was an interest to want to share. You know, share what I learned and all these great concepts that just came to mean so much to me. And as Michael knows, I talk about all the time, it's not just about the asanas at all. That's one small piece of it. It's the philosophy. It's the Sutra 1.1. Now we practice. From now on, we practice, right? We don't really know everything, and we never will. Hopefully we'll get there to bliss at some point when we're way old or whatever, but it's a long journey. And so I really enjoyed the teacher training I did at a different studio. But when I got done, I still felt like I knew nothing. I thought, I'm going to hurt somebody. I don't know what I'm doing, right? So I kept going with Sun and Moon to do the 300 hour, and I'm so glad I did. And I can tell a comparison between that studio, which is great, and this one. It's a different approach. Sun and Moon is much more thorough, much more thorough. I feel like I got a much better education from Sun and Moon in a different way than the other studio. They just had a different kind of focus. And I'm with you on the exam. There's a lot on that exam. It took a long time to do. It's no small feat, as well as the accountability. One of the benefits is that you do it at your own pace, right? You fit it into your life. But the problem then is life takes over and all of a sudden you're not fitting it in. And 2 years goes by and you're like, wait, I got to get this done. It's a lot of work. But man, it's super rewarding. And I have to say the very best part, probably the icing on the cake, are some of, but not all of the faces you guys see here. I mean, getting to know all of you, whether it's my fellow teachers, whether it's my fellow cohort of the 300, whether it's the foundation folks that have come up kind of behind or with me that I've gotten to know, has just been a real joy. It's a wonderful community. So my impression of the teaching program is that it just brings so much to you. You don't ever have to teach. You may want to share, like I've learned to do. I really enjoy sharing what I've learned in a lot of different ways, but you don't ever have to teach, and you don't have to be worried about getting up in front of people. That may never be part of your journey. And that's okay. I think this program will teach you so much beyond that, for which you'll be grateful. So those are my 2 cents on the training programs.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for that beautiful share. Carol Stell, I want to put you on the spot for a moment. Pardon me and forgive me. So Carol did her teacher training at Sun and Moon, but before this current incarnation of the program. And just when I was starting to take a faculty sort of level position, if you could call it that, Carol was finishing her program, and I got to observe her just before she got her 200-hour certification. And now Carol is the one of us on faculty who observes others. And so she's really seen a long stretch of evolution and change and growth in so many of our community. Carol, can you share a bit about your thoughts?
Yes. Welcome. It's nice to see all of your faces, new faces and familiar ones. Yeah, so I guess Sun and Moon I'll go straight to it, has become my family. I mean, Sun and Moon is my family. I don't have any children. I don't even have a dog anymore. Sun and Moon is my family, and I've been practicing there for 20 years, and I started the teacher training. Back then it was a 300-hour program, the first one, and that was 15 years ago. And then I'll just kind of give you just a few highlights. I don't have a peak, and I don't have I just have a couple of things to share, but of my experience. But back then, I was working full-time at a very high pressure job in the corporate world in DC. And when I first started practicing yoga there, I'm like, oh my gosh, I knew within a year, I just had never had any kind of a calling ever in my life like this. It's like you're going to teach, you're going to become a teacher. I'm like, it's like somebody talking to me outside of my body. And I didn't really understand how I was going to make it happen, because I had the big job, which was, more than 40 hours a week. And anyway, so I ended up working it out. The program was flexible, so you could do it, over time. And I think back then it was 18 months for the 300 hours. And I was able to finish all the coursework in 18 months. But then it took me 3 years to ask for the exam. It was like, how can I carve out that chunk of time? And anyway, so I finally did that. And then I decided I wanted to keep going, and Sun and Moon was just starting the 300-hour, the Dharma program. And I joined in, and I still had the same job, but I was teaching at the time. And, but I just had such a thirst for more. I still have a thirst for more. There's always going to be a thirst. You're never going to get quenched, because you're constantly learning. You learn from your students, you learn from yourself, you learn from, what does happen, what doesn't happen. And so anyway, I'll just share the main sentiment that I had going into the program. I was the opposite of Annie. I walked up there and I was like, had the imposter syndrome. It's like, who am I to get up here and teach a pose? And I had such a complex about what am I trying to do here? And just all the nerves that come along with, trying to get up there and during the training program to do these practice teachings, it's to me, it was so intimidating. And I just felt like, I had the imposter syndrome. And anyway, you get up there, and then the words just kind of start flowing out of my mouth. It just kind of happened. They didn't come out perfectly, but that's why they call it practice. You just keep practicing it. And then, over time, it just becomes a little more, the confidence that slowly started building. And then I saw, my cohorts getting up there and having the same, they're all nervous and things are coming out funky out of their mouths. And you're all in the same boat, and you build this bond with the cohorts that you go through the training with, and they become like your lifetime friends. At least, one or more are that's just gonna happen. And they become some of the most, prized relationships that I have today. And just so much beauty that comes out of doing this training, and just all this watching yourself grow and watching yourself blossom as you learn and digest and experience, all the philosophy, and then just, challenging yourself to do what it is you're feeling called to do. And I never look back. I'm still, wanting to learn more. I've been, I was a workshop junkie and a retreat junkie for a long time. I've taken a break here the last few years, but I'll never stop learning. It's just one of those things that you're passionate about, and you just keep going. But so if you're one of those who you're like, who am I to get up there? Imposter syndrome, don't worry, you call me. I'll tell you, it's nothing to worry about. You get past it.
Thank you, Carol. We're so lucky to have you.
No.
Hey, Dina, I know you need to leave soon, I think. Is there anything you will want to quick share or willing to quick share? Peak Valley wisdom.
Everybody. The only thing I'd like to say is to piggyback on, I'm not sure, I think it was Kristen that said it. I remember somebody saying that the path of yoga is you start it, we sort of catch the bug of yoga. And at some point you start sharing it with people, and you just can't help yourself. And people start asking you about yoga and about your practice. And before you know it, maybe you're showing somebody in your family or a close friend, and that's the path. And sort of the next level is, yes, this is what happens. And you start to share and, call yourself a teacher if you'd like, or whatever you want to call it. But yes, it's part of the lineage. So if you have found yourself here, there is a reason. There's a true reason why you have ended up here, and follow your heart, because you're meant to be here, and you're meant to continue on to, the next level it up, in your own practice.
Thank you, Dina. Anybody else want to share and or pop in, raise your hand if you have a question? Deb Diamond. Make sure you're unmuted.
I have to say, I'm really glad I joined this chat, because it's becoming part of my ongoing yoga training. I'm with Carol. I have postponed taking the final exam. And to hear you say that it took you 3 years just gives me courage to keep going with what I'm doing. And it is in my future. And what Dina said too, if you're in this, it's because you're meant to be here, and it's always there for you. I was one of those people who joined the program to deepen my practice. I'd been going to Sun and Moon for several years, and always wondering, why is the instructor saying what they're saying at this moment in time? And why are they asking you to align your limbs in a certain way and breathe in a certain way? And I signed up for the program to understand that better. And it absolutely worked that way. In the meantime, life, as some other folks here have said, especially with the pandemic, life took a detour And yoga is not as big a part of has not been as big a part of my life the last few months as I would like, but it's always there, and the community is always there. And that is an exciting and gratifying knowledge to have. And again, the knowledge that whatever you learn, it teaches you. With every new thing you learn, you understand how much more there is to learn. And that's exciting and gratifying. And so every moment that was a little bit intimidating was also, again, as Annie said, was also a new level of understanding. And that just keeps going. It just keeps going, and that's wonderful. And it wouldn't be happening to me without the program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deb. Well, it brings to mind something's coming to mind that I'll share, as sort of an analogy of the breath, which is you take a slow and steady inhale, and then sometimes before the exhale comes, or before the final part of the inhale comes, you exhale a little bit and then inhale a little more. So there's sort of a loop-de-loop happening. That's my experience of breath, and I've incorporated that into some of my pranayama. That's how we do it at Sun and Moon. So for example, a 200-hour, and then a little bit of a looping back as the 300-hour students join in. They observe and sometimes participate and teach in the 200-hour, and then a little looping back and then forward some more, and then they're becoming teachers, and then they're looping back and teaching some of the 300-hour, and then looping back. And we get these beautiful overlays of relationships. And one of the ways that we could define yoga is that it is relationship. And so I'm loving that I'm seeing all of these relationship loops right here, just in this small unit of those who've gathered with us in this call today. And it happens all the time.
And that connection's such a big part of this program. I have a student that was in the program about 7 years ago who's reaching back and is ready to finish their 200-hour exam. So if life happens, which it will, there are opportunities for adjustments. I was one of those. I joined the teacher training program in 2003, and life happened, and it took me several years before I finally took my exam. So
Several
if you're
years
worried
and another
about,
baby, right, Vicki?
yes, yes, right, the surprise baby. So that, if you're looking at that year program and you're worried about that fitting everything in right on top of something, that take a breath. It'll all come as you need it to come. And as you go through the training, what you hear is what you need to hear, and you'll learn and get what you need to get in the program, because you can always come back and learn more about stuff later. As many of you said, it's the tip of the iceberg. I myself, teaching for 17 years, will still always be a yoga student, that there's always more out there, and it's a wonderful thing about yoga.
I want to encourage anyone who's watching on Facebook Live to chat in if you have questions or comments. And meanwhile, who else who's here would like to share a moment? Judy.
I would just like to add my voice to pretty much what everybody has said so far. It all resonates with me. I began the training program because I had recently retired and didn't really know what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And so I feel like the program has given me an answer to that question, because while I have learned, I knew really very, very little at the start. And I learned a lot through the 200-hour program, which took me more than a year, maybe a year and a half or so. I finished in the spring with the exam. But it's just the tip of the iceberg, and there is so much more to learn. And it's just fascinating. All of it is fascinating. My biggest surprise probably was anatomy. That's just one of the streams of topics that we learn about. And when we started, oh, it was probably my low point. It just was, all these names of all these body parts and lots of memorization was what it felt like, and bones and muscles and ligaments and tendons and but eventually I got to a point where I was starting to understand not just the names of things, but what they actually do. And once you start to try to learn about what all of our different pieces accomplish and how they do it, it's just miraculous. And it's so complicated. I mean, several of the people who were in the group that I took the class with had other, their sort of day job, so to speak, were in the medical field or had some reason to have studied anatomy in the past, but it was all brand new to me. My sister's a doctor, but I was not a sciencey person. And so as it turns out, what I really didn't like at the start, I love now. I get out my books and I study, well, what muscles are we using in this pose? And then all of the endocrinology aspect, which is even more complicated, is just also fascinating. And so it has just like opened up a whole new world of things to learn about, and then to find people to share it with. As others have said, I didn't really know whether I was going to want to teach when I started. And as it turns out, yes, I'm just taking, well, I've been teaching my family. I asked them if they would let me teach them twice. And their job was to give me feedback. And this was already in the pandemic, so we were doing it on Zoom because they're all over the place. And now, a year and a couple months later, we have weekly classes. And so it's been such a joy to have that community with my siblings, my kids. I think we are much more connected in spite of the pandemic than we ever would have been had this little yoga experiment not have happened. So
that's beautiful. I love to hear that.
Joy to my life. That's all I can say.
Yeah. So I wanted to jump in, speaking of anatomy, and yes, Rachel put in the chat, long live the greater trochanter. And if you're watching at home and you don't know what that is, it's that little part of your upper thigh bone that like hooks out, little knobby part. Anyway, one enhancement that we have incorporated in the program in just the last 2 years, year and a half, is that we have brought in Leslie Kaminoff and Amy Matthews, who are topmost experts in the field of functional yoga anatomy. And so we've brought in their online course, which goes through the names, not just the names though, but why they matter. And as Judy said, like what they do and how that helps you live your life. And that's been a really nice thing to add in. And there was something else I was going to say, and as soon as someone else shares, then I'll remember what that other thing is.
Well, I'll pop in and share that one of our former attendees in the program was unable to attend today, but she wanted to share that the Sun and Moon program changed, expanded, and opened her spirit, and still does. So there
Oh,
is that connection. And that was from
lovely.
Kathy.
And sure enough, I do remember the other piece that I wanted to just point out in terms of anatomy and physiology. We bring in one of our local favorite physicians, Dr. Marie Brady, who teaches about the anatomy, physiology of the endocrine system and the digestive system, which is a really nice added piece to the program, because she's really great about relating it to real life processes that we all experience in the body. Becky, you put your hand up for a second. Was there something else?
I was just going to build off of what Judy and Deb said, in that there are so many people who come in with different backgrounds. So if you don't know anatomy, don't panic. I really liked the anatomy part. I took anatomy in college, so it was kind of fun to revisit all of that. I liked the history of yoga. The philosophy, it was interesting, but I could kind of take or leave that part. So I think there's something for everyone, and and I think too, you really kind of find where your niche is within the yoga world. I panicked because I thought by the end I was going to have to know everything about every kind of yoga and be able to teach any kind of yoga, and that's simply not the case. I've really found where my comfort zone is, and I'm really comfortable with the yin yoga and the slower yoga, and that's just, I've just accepted that that's the kind of teacher I am. And somebody else can teach the strength yoga and all of that. So I think that you will gravitate to what is natural to you.
For those watching and wondering about what the actual structure of the program is, we've got all that information really well laid out on our website. So if you go to sunandmoonstudio.com/training, and then you pick the program that you're interested in, you can see how we lay it out with weekend immersions and meetups and class attendance and observations, and that is all there. So any other shares and or questions, Judy?
Yeah, I just wanted to also mention the instructors. Annie, you mentioned Leslie Kaminoff and Marie Sean Brady, and the program exposes you to so many different amazing teachers, both on the faculty at Sun and Moon, but people from all over the country. I was really a newbie, and so I was not familiar with all the famous yoga teachers. But I have a friend who's a teacher at a different studio, and was mentioning to her, that I was going to be doing a workshop that as part of the training. And I mentioned to her, I think it was maybe Rodney Yee. And she was like, "You're taking a class from Rodney Yee? He's like a rock star." And I was oblivious to all of the teachers and their notoriety. I don't know what the right word is, but it was just amazing to have so many different perspectives on yoga. They all of the teachers, both at Sun and Moon, and the people who come in from outside, bring very different approaches to yoga, and it just really broadens your perspective and makes it easier to have the realization that Becky has, and I think that all of us do, that, well, this is the way I am meant to teach, and that's okay, that every teacher is different, and you don't have to follow some cookie cutter mold. You just have to take a deep breath and sort of find what
is natural to you. So
Yeah.
I really appreciated the breadth of experience that we were given through the program.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, so one month you'll get John Schumacher, who is the preeminent Iyengar yoga teacher in this country, and he'll be teaching about the precision placement of your left foot in a right facing triangle pose. And then the next month you'll be having a really heartfelt session with Diane Bondi about why it is so critical to pay attention to how yoga is showing up in a world that has been largely whitewashed. And then another month, you'll be hearing from Baxter Bell, who will be cracking jokes and playing his violin and telling you about the latest medical research on yoga for healthy aging. And so that's sort of like a good sampling of the guest voices that we bring in, and we're really proud of that. And we have relationships with these teachers. They are our friends, and that means something to us. And I think that lends flavor to the program itself. Well, we're closing in on almost an hour together, and I want to honor everybody's time and also make sure that everyone who wants to share either a question or an experience has an opportunity. Is there anybody else? All right, Vicky keeps me honest. Is there anything I've not said that needs to be said, Vicky?
I think you've covered it. Yeah. All right. Well, if you're catching the replay on social media of this and you have questions, put them in the comment section. We will respond. And those of you who have been here live, thank you so very much for your time and your presence and your spirit and encouragement. That's what Sun and Moon is all about. This gathering of beautiful beingness. And I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. And we're happy to help you with any questions that you have. So reach out to us and we'll help you along. And hopefully you'll consider joining our programs.
All right. Take good care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste. Peace.
Bye.